By interfering?
Well, technically now you're starting to pose into somebody else's private property with your videoing. Yes, sir. Hey, did they give you permission to film inside their truck?
I don't need permission out in public.
In public?
I don't need permission.
In somebody's vehicle?
I don't need permission out in public.
No, not to film us, you're correct. But to film inside somebody's vehicle, that's an extension of their house, and that is a private place. So you do need somebody's permission to film inside their vehicle.
But is that a crime?
One of the deputies informs Mr. Turner that he cannot film the inside of someone else's vehicle without their permission, even if that vehicle is in a public place. As we have discussed many times on ATA, the First Amendment protects the right to film anyone and anything within plain view of the public eye, because individuals have no expectation of privacy in public. Although the deputy claims that the vehicle is an extension of the owner's house and a private place, the diminished expectation of privacy an individual has in an automobile is well established in court decisions. In the 1976 case of South Dakota versus Opperman, the U.S. Supreme Court concluded that, quote, the expectation of privacy with respect to one's automobile is significantly less than that relating to one's home or office. First, the Opperman decision pointed to the fact that, quote, automobiles, unlike homes, are subjected to pervasive and continuing governmental regulation and controls, including periodic inspection and licensing requirements.
You see that smirk on the deputy's face right there? That's the look of a man who thinks he's got absolute power. He thinks the badge means he owns the sidewalk, the air, and even the pixels inside your camera lens. But what happens next is the part they don't want you to know about. Because in a world where the elite protect their own, a veteran sergeant stepped in and corrected his deputies in front of a rolling camera. We all knew this was happening, didn't we? We've seen the videos of cops overstepping, treating the Constitution like a suggestion box. But this file, this specific incident out of New Braunfels, Texas, is different. It exposes the rotten core of the system, but it also reveals a hero hiding in plain sight. You have a citizen, Philip Turner, standing on a public easement, doing what is entirely legal, filming a traffic stop. The deputies descend on him like he's the criminal. They tell him he can't record the inside of a truck because it's an extension of their house. That's not law.
There's not an issue with you filming us. There's an issue with you getting any closer to the scene.
I'm not getting any closer than here.
Okay. Do not move from here. All right? Any closer from here, we're going to have any more issues, okay?
I already told you I'm not moving from here, and,
okay.
And that's it.
Thank you. I encourage you to film. Thank you. So the sergeant's here. He said he'd be over here talking to you in just a little bit, okay?
What's up?
Our sergeant, okay. He's going to be over here talking to you in just a little bit. He's here. He's actually...
All right. You got a business card or anything?
A business card?
Yeah.
Not on me. I can get you one out of my car in a little bit.
All right, cool.
All right, hang tight for me. Do you have your information? Your driver's license?
What's that?
Do you have your driver's license or name, date of birth?
For what?
Because now you're a witness to this crime that we're doing.
What crime is that?
The crime that we got these people in the back of these cars for.
I don't know what crime they committed.
You don't have to know.
Well, how do I know what they did, though? I don't know what they did.
Okay, they broke the law. They're in possession of narcotics. That's why they're in the back of our cars.
Okay, now you're telling me that, okay?
Yeah. So, do you have your name and date of birth?
No.
Or a driver's license?
No.
They threatened him with arrest for failure to identify because he was a witness to a crime. They twist the penal code like a pretzel to justify handcuffing a man who did nothing but look at them. It makes your blood boil, doesn't it? That's the goal. They want you afraid to watch. They want you blind.
Door open.
Look, all I'm asking you to do is go stand back over where you were.
Even if I was back there, I could still see inside the
Okay,
car.
so go stand back over there. It's simple as that. Because right now that I'm having to come over here and ask you to move again, now you're interfering with our investigation. Because instead of me being able to focus over here, I got to focus on you. So if you could just go stand over there, I can call a supervisor if you'd like to speak to a supervisor.
Yeah, go ahead and call a supervisor.
You can make any complaints you'd like, but all I'm asking you to do is go stand back over there where you were.
Just go ahead and call a supervisor.
Okay, do me a favor and go stand back over there for me, all right, bud?
I don't see what's wrong being here.
I'm asking you to go stand back where you were. There was not an issue where you were standing. Now there's an issue where you're at.
Because I'm filming inside the truck, right?
Yes, sir. You can film us all you want. We don't care. We want you to do it from a safe distance. So if you could go back to where you were, that'd be greatly appreciated.
All right. If the issue is with me filming here inside the truck, I won't film inside the truck.
If you could go stand back where you were, please.
And that's when the shift happens. Enter Sergeant Montenez. Now, here is the unlikely silenced hero. At first, he sounds just like the rest of them. He parrots the line about privacy and evidence. You think he's just another cog in the machine. He's distracted, taking phone calls, brushing off the citizen. It looks like justice is about to get blackballed right there on the side of Interstate 35. But then, something miraculous happens. The sergeant actually stops talking. He listens. He stops defending the ego of his junior officers and starts applying field logic. He realizes that Turner isn't a threat. He realizes that the camera is rolling and that the truth is in plain view. He tells Turner he isn't doing anything wrong and lets him walk away without giving up his ID. That moment saved the department from a lawsuit. But more importantly, it vindicated every one of us who believes in the plain text of the Bill of Rights.
Have been available from their testimony. If a witness feels threatened by the officers, then it is unlikely that their testimony will be reliable in court, and their statements could potentially be dismissed altogether. If the deputy's objective was to identify Mr. Turner as a witness, then the deputies should have de-escalated the situation and asked for Mr. Turner's cooperation. Instead, they accused him of trespassing, illegally recording, failing to identify himself, and a host of other crimes. It is clear that the driving force for this interaction was the egos of the deputies and their ignorance of the law. And if the sergeant hadn't intervened, then this interaction would likely have had a different outcome. Sergeant Montenez gets an A-, because although he initially attempted to validate the conduct of the deputies and was operating under certain misconceptions about the law, the sergeant engaged in a productive dialogue with Mr. Turner, realized that he was within his rights, and allowed Mr. Turner to go free without being forced to identify himself. Once the sergeant was able to engage in a dialogue with Mr. Turner, the tides began to turn in his favor. Sergeant Montenez took the time to listen to Mr. Turner, and ultimately made the decision to allow him to go free. I commend Sergeant Montenez for exercising professional discretion and for making an effort to listen to Mr. Turner's concerns. The sergeant's field experience and willingness to listen significantly contributed to the de-escalation of this encounter, and this is one interaction where requesting.
He corrected his deputies. He didn't double down. He didn't circle the wagons.
And I have no problem with that.
After speaking with Mr. Turner, the sergeant realized that he was not a threat and was within his rights to film the traffic stop. The sergeant allowed Mr. Turner to go free without identifying himself, but Mr. Turner offered to exchange business cards, and the sergeant obliged. 4 days later, Mr. Turner visited the Comal County Sheriff's Office to file a formal complaint against the officers and file a public records request for the body camera footage. Although the clerk working at the front desk was rude, the officers were relatively cordial while Mr. Turner filled out the necessary paperwork, and the complaint was submitted without issue. It is unclear whether Mr. Turner sued the department or the deputies, but I suspect that filing a formal complaint was as far as he intended to go. Overall, the Comal County Sheriff's deputies get an F for displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of the First Amendment, misrepresenting the authority of Code 38.02, and maintaining a hostile and condescending demeanor throughout the interaction. Invoking the authority of Code 38.02 in an attempt to force a citizen or witness to identify themselves not only discourages other witnesses from coming forward in the future, but it also has the potential to corrupt the evidence that may have been available from their testimony. If a witness feels threatened by the officers, then it is unlikely that their testimony will be reliable in court, and their statements could potentially be dismissed altogether. If the deputy's objective was to identify Mr. Turner as a.
He chose the law over the locker room.
So you're going to refuse to be listed as a witness since you sat here and videotaped the entire scene?
If you need a copy of the video, I can give you a copy of the video.
Well, yeah, but we're also going to need to identify you in our report that you were here videoing, so when we come to get a copy of that video, we can get that.
All right, let me talk to your supervisor.
He said that he won't want to give us his name and date of birth until he talks to our supervisor. So.
And you're probably going to end up going to jail because right now you're witnessing a crime.
Well, I asked to talk to a supervisor. He's here, so why can't I speak with him?
The deputies request that Mr. Turner provide his driver's license or his name and date of birth, and when he refuses, they inform him that he could be arrested for failing to identify himself because he was a witness to a crime. Under Section 38.02 of the Texas Penal Code, an individual can be charged with the crime of failure to identify for intentionally giving a false or fictitious name, residence address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has good cause to believe the individual is a witness to a criminal offense. Therefore, Mr. Turner could not be arrested under this statute for merely refusing to provide this information altogether. However, some states do criminalize a witness's refusal to give personal information when requested by a police officer. For example, Section 2921.29 of the Ohio Revised Code makes it a fourth-degree misdemeanor for an individual who is in a public place to refuse to disclose their name, address, or date of birth when requested by a law enforcement officer who reasonably...
Let's look at the real names and the real documented events mixed with what we know happens in these precincts. Deputy Cameron Chelly was the one breathing down Turner's neck. The Comal County Sheriff's Office was the agency. December 31st, 2016 was the date. This is all on the record. Turner filed a formal complaint 4 days later. He went into the sheriff's office, walked past the rude clerk, and put it on paper. They call him a First Amendment auditor, but to the establishment, he's a troublemaker. Yet this is the same Philip Turner who was responsible for major legislation regarding the right to record police in the Fifth Circuit Court. He is a legend in the fight against the surveillance state.
Mr. Turner could be legitimately arrested for criminal trespass under these circumstances. After the deputies inform Mr. Turner that the owner of the property has requested that he leave, the deputies then retrieve the Camping World manager to deliver the message in person. After awkwardly telling Mr. Turner to leave, the Camping World manager steps back while Mr. Turner and the sergeant have a discussion.
But this officer here was telling me that I had to move back over there, I couldn't stand over there, and I was asking him why. He told me that I wasn't allowed to film inside the vehicle here. But
I mean, that's their privacy too. We got to get their consent to go in, so it makes it any different for you.
well, that's to go in.
Yeah.
But I'm not going in. I'm just observing.
Initially, the sergeant attempts to justify the actions of his deputies, and Mr. Turner was not given the opportunity to engage with the sergeant because their conversation was being interrupted by phone calls. In between each call, the deputies would try to convince Mr. Turner to identify himself, but eventually the sergeant hung up the phone long enough to have a conversation with Mr. Turner.
How are you, man? You're not doing anything wrong, and but here's the deal. They got a point there. I mean, your worst case scenario is that your camera would be a part of evidence, but we're not going to go there because I have a camera. I have plenty of cameras going, so I don't need your camera. Now, if something were to happen to where, man, we get into a shooting or something or a fight and somebody gets hurt.
You won't see him on the mainstream news. They don't want you to know his name because he makes the FBI and the corporate media nervous. He proves that one man with a cell phone is more powerful than a department of lawyers, if he knows the rules. The deputies were banking on his ignorance. They got served with knowledge instead.
Is that what you want to do?
I need to speak to your supervisor.
Is that what you want
I
to do?
need to speak to your supervisor.
Why aren't you understanding? You put yourself in this situation right here. You see that? You're on private
what?
property
Private
right now.
or public?
You're on private property right now.
Okay, what does that have to do with anything?
Do you have permission to be here?
Did the owner trespass me?
Well, this guy.
He doesn't want you here.
This guy actually did come over and tell us he wanted you to leave.
The deputies inform Mr. Turner, who was standing just outside a fence surrounding the entrance to a Camping World RV sales lot, that he is filming on private property and that the owner would like him to leave. Although the First Amendment protects the right to free speech in public places, including filming police interactions, it does not require private property owners to accommodate speech by others. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law infringing upon the freedoms of speech, and although the Supreme Court determined in the 1925 case of Gitlow versus New York that First Amendment freedom of speech is also protected by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment from state government restrictions, the courts have repeatedly determined that it is impossible for a purely private party to violate the First Amendment. The First Amendment only protects against government restrictions on speech. This concept, which is referred to as the state action doctrine, means that private citizens do not have public
Now, connect the dots to the bigger cultural moment. This wasn't just an isolated traffic stop. This was the spark of a reckoning. This was the beginning of the era where the public stopped believing the official narrative. We see the arrogance of the elite class, the ones with badges, the ones with press credentials, trying to gaslight the common man. They tell you what you saw with your own eyes isn't real. That's the demonic inversion of truth. They treat the public square like their private property and your children like their jurisdiction. But Sergeant Montenez, he represents the remnant. He is the man inside the system who still fears God and respects the oath he took. He listened to the citizen, and in doing so, he exposed the lie that all cops are untouchable. He proved that there is a justice system, however buried, that works when good men refuse to go along with the mob. It gives you that everything makes sense now payoff. We aren't crazy. The system is broken, but the soul of the individual can still repair it. But here we are, years later, and what has changed? Has Deputy Chelly been retrained? Or has he been promoted? Did the Comal County Sheriff's Office embrace transparency? Or did they just bury the complaint in a drawer and hope everyone forgot? We don't get an ending. We don't get a resolution. That's the reality of the expose. The mainstream machine keeps grinding. They still arrest auditors. They still harass witnesses. They still lean on the thin blue line to silence the truth. The file is still open, and the wound is still festering. It is a cold case of moral failure. The outrage is that we have to rely on a single sergeant having a good day to protect our rights. The outrage is that the deputies who threatened a lawful citizen probably kept their pensions. So I ask you directly, if a sergeant hadn't been called to that scene, would Deputy Chelly have dragged Philip Turner to jail for the crime of watching? And if they do it to him in broad daylight, what are they doing to you when the cameras are off?
Manager to deliver the message in person. After awkwardly telling Mr. Turner to leave, the Camping World manager steps back while Mr. Turner and the sergeant have a discussion.
But this officer here was telling me that I had to move back over there. I couldn't stand over there. And I was asking him why. He told me that I wasn't allowed to film inside the vehicle here. But
I mean, that's their privacy too. We got to get their consent to go in, so it makes it any different for you.
well, that's to go in.
Yeah.
But I'm not going in. I'm just observing.
Initially, the sergeant attempts to justify the actions of his deputies, and Mr. Turner was not given the opportunity to engage with the sergeant because their conversation was being interrupted by phone calls. In between each call, the deputies would try to convince Mr. Turner to identify himself, but eventually the sergeant hung up the phone long enough to have a conversation with Mr. Turner.
Argument. You're not doing anything wrong, and but here's the deal. They got a point there. I mean, your worst case scenario is that your camera would be a part of evidence, but we're not going to go there because I have a camera. I have plenty of cameras going, so I don't need your camera. Now, if something were to happen to where, man, we get into a shooting or something or a fight and somebody gets hurt, then you know what? I'm taking your camera because that's so you got to be careful with that in the future. Okay, when you're doing this,
But on that one, I'll tell you, there was a shooting on 6th Street that happened not too long ago, and I helped.
Tell me in the comments what you think really happens behind those closed precinct doors, because we all know the answer is darker than we can imagine.